Hello, welcome to this introduction to the IT Disaster Recovery Planning Project for DARPI US. I'll be going through the principles and the design of the IT Disaster Recovery Plan and the expected outcome. My name is Frederick Helvig Larsen. I'm an expert director of risk and security in Devoteam in Denmark. And I'll be heading this project from our side. From Novo Nordisk side, it's Brigitte Gerstam, that's the document owner and the project manager. First of all, a quick disclaimer. This project is work in progress, so please handle this slide deck with due care. And keep in mind that this is a very early stage. This document has not been reviewed nor approved. So again, keep in mind that a lot of the roles and initials in these presentations are examples only and should be treated as such. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me or Brigitte Gerstam that is heading this project in Novo Nordisk. So, moving forward, first of all, thank you for participating in ensuring the resilience of Novo Nordisk by being a part of the IT Disaster Recovery Project. This video will prepare you for the project and your specific roles and give you the necessary background to participate in the workshops that you will be invited to if you're part of this. First of all, let me give you an overview of what we are building here. This is a kind of a busy cartoon of what's going on in an IT disaster recovery situation in an IT crisis. Again, some of the terms here may change over time, but that's fine for now. Let me give you some pointers about what's going on here. So the first phase, what's going on here, is the activation phase. And the activation phase is basically where you're in normal operation and you do incident management and incident response on a day-to-day basis. This, of course, has to do with what time of day it is, what service level agreements you have, what time of year it is. That can all depend on the seriousness of an incident. But at some point, this will trigger the IT crisis commander that we refer to as the title right now. And this alert system is one of the things we are designing and building. In phase 2, the control phase, you can see the IT crisis commander giving out hats, giving out caps. We are using that to show that roles are being assigned and the team is being summoned. So this is the control phase is also sometimes called the chaos phase, because this is where you react, you respond, and you probably have too little information, but you still need to act. Then you can move forward to the recovery phase, and in the recovery phase is where it's an iterative phase, you can see from the arrows, and in the recovery phase is where you work to get back into a normal operation. And this can be an outage of IT services, so it can be an availability issue, but it could also be a confidentiality issue where you have a data breach, or you have integrity issues, which means that information is unreliable or out of sync. You can see the IT crisis commander here giving out orders and controlling the team and being in charge. You have the IT crisis coordinator, which is a person that's second in command, you could say, for the IT crisis commander. So making sure that all the efforts are coordinated and everybody has a clear picture about what's going on and what's next. All the green people here signifies support functions. So they are supporting and making it easier on the IT people. Some of the people in the support functions are out here. So that's communication for one. So communication, making sure that all the stakeholders are informed and know what's going on. It's a difficult task in practice. And you have logistics here. You have a guy buying pizza and Coca-Cola. For the IT team, working up here, drinking Coca-Cola and eating pizza and working all night with their team lead to make sure that you get back in normal operation. And you can see there's also some gray roles, and those are the ones we call advisor roles. So advisors will usually keep out of the way, but they'll still bring some important questions or important advice to the table. One of them is information security, risk management, compliance, sitting out here, making sure that you don't worsen the situation and that risks that emerge are handled and managed with due care. And you have someone taking care of the business and the stakeholders. He's basically standing here with his back to the crisis management team and looking out towards the business and the stakeholders. So his objective is to make sure that you're doing the right thing and that you're listening to what's going on in the business and bringing that into to the team. And they'll meet at some frequency and discuss the status and work with agendas and task lists, action cards in the disaster recovery plan. So using the IT disaster recovery plan as a tool. They'll have meetings, and at some point they'll probably decide that this is no longer an IT crisis. This is no longer something that where we are using our IT disaster recovery plan. And then you move forward to the stand down phase, and the stand down phase is where you normalize and where you tidy up. You'll probably have done a lot of things in the recovery phase that are undocumented, that are not following standard operating procedures, and things that need to get back into a normal operation. So it could be changes that has not been described or logged. So that's what's going on in the stand down phase. That's where you normalize and get back into normal operations. So that's you could say the twilight zone here. And in the phase 5, resilience is where you reached your normal operation and where you can look back, describe what went wrong, what happened, how did we solve it, and is there any way that we could do this better in the future and become more resilient? So here you have the 4 roles. Keep these colors in mind. These colors will be used throughout this presentation and throughout the plan. So they're significant, the colors and the roles. And the timelines, the phases that I've just talked about, they're also significant. The rest is controlled by the plan. So just to reiterate, you have the red as the crisis commander. You have all the action teams, IT services, platforms, networks, facilities, vendors being the blue ones. You have support as crisis coordinator, communications, logistics, and you have the advisories which is business relations, security, risk, and compliance. So we've drafted a organizational diagram of this, and again, keep in mind that all the initials here are examples and in draft, but just to give you an idea of the organization. You can see that the crisis coordinator is sitting here like a spider in the web, trying to make sure that everything here is coordinated and in sync. It's a difficult task, but a very important one. And then you have all the other roles that I described. And as you can see, we haven't given examples of all the roles and haven't drafted everything yet, but we'll do that as we move forward in the project. So that was the basics. I hope that so far you're still interested and eager to proceed. The next part of the presentation will go through 3 steps. So take a break and get back to us, or move on from here. It's your choice. The next thing is a description of the project plan and activities. So to let you know what's next, what will happen, what can you expect. Second here is the concept and the deliverables. So we'll give you an idea about why this is designed as it is, and what our thoughts are and what experience we build a plan like this on. And the final bit is how we test it, because we are already planning a test sometime in September. So give you an idea about how that will turn out. All right? I hope you are eager to proceed. Okay, so the scope and objective of this is to build an IT disaster recovery plan that's organizational and operational. And what we mean by that is that it'll be operational by being short, specific, and to the point, but it's organizational, so it has to do with how you put structure on an unfamiliar situation, and put some kind of a structure over chaos. It's organizational because we are not touching on specific systems and doing specific IT system recovery plans, but I'll get back to that. We're also assisting you in testing the IT disaster recovery plan and providing you with some guiding principles about this. So we'll be facilitating the test of the plan. This is what the project organization looks like. Brigitte Gerstam is the project leader, project owner of this internally, and Sonali, placed here, is assisting Brigitte in a lot of the practical stuff, inviting, for instance, for the different workshops. She's coordinating that with my colleague Alan Pletner, who's doing a lot of the practical stuff from our side. We have another experienced consultant, Anders, on the project, and I myself is situated here and heading the Devoteam consultancy crew. This is what the project plan looks like right now. There's a lot of details here. I won't go through them. Basically, what's important for you here is probably the timeline. So before August, or in the beginning of August, we'll have a draft of the plan in its complete form. So everything that we are designing around the plan will be done before summer, and everything regarding the training and implementation and test will be after the summer. So we have a tight and busy schedule before going on summer holiday. These are some examples of the tasks and the agendas on the different project activities. You don't have to read this right now, because when you're invited to a specific workshop that's relevant for you, we'll make sure that you have the agenda so you can prepare and give you some pointers about what's relevant for you to know, so we can have an efficient workshop. We'll always keep these workshops as short and as to the point as at all possible. So the better prepared you are for preparing yourself by jotting down some thoughts and ideas and things to share with us, the quicker and more precise a workshop we can have. This is an example. This is how the workshop planning looks like right now. That's of course also subject to change, but we are very busy right now in trying to coordinate all the different calendars and making sure that you get invited to the workshops. And we hope also that you will prioritize this in your busy day and help us keep on track on this project. We know it's difficult with all these busy stakeholders, but help us out as much as you can. All right. So let me give you some background about how this project is designed. In the basics, the IT disaster recovery plan is designed to be on top of your normal operation. So at some point, something is such a significant event that you're probably be coming short on your normal operational processes. So you'll need to bring in new resources and have a task force or a team surrounding a specific issue and being focused on that. And that's what the IT disaster recovery plan gives you. That's a specific kind of structure that will make your work very efficient. We're dealing with people, technology and processes and trying to make sure that that's all coordinated in the plan. And we're also addressing things like integrity, confidentiality and availability, and also safety from the point of view that some IT systems may also show up to be a safety risk actually in the real world. What's not covered by a project like this is the prerequisites. We're touching upon them, but we're not going in depth with these things. So IT system-specific recovery plans is a prerequisite, but it's without outside scope. Test plans for your systems, specific documentation that you need in order to get systems up, back and running. Description of dependencies and priorities. Dependencies can be IT systems dependencies, but it can also be dependencies on vendors or manpower. And of course, we'll also touch on your robust design. So, for instance, that all the information and the documentation that you need, that's also actually available in a crisis where some systems are unavailable. So it's not within scope, but it is something that we'll touch upon. We're standing on the shoulders of a lot of experience, and let me just share some points with you that I hope will make you curious and reflect a bit upon crisis management. So the first thing is that we are looking into what we can learn from rescue and defense. There's a lot of other areas than IT that has a lot of experience with going into situations that are chaotic, dangerous, and unforeseeable, you could say. But they do it with a lot of experience and they do it in some very particular ways that that I want to share with you. So if you look at rescue services, fire departments, police, defense, and so on, there's some things that are similar when you look at them. First of all, simplicity is key. So we always see that plans are quite simple. They're not thick and elaborate. They're one-pagers, they're action cards, they're task lists, and so on, checklists. They often depend very much on structure. So when you do not know what you are facing next, then you put things into a structure, and I'll come back to that. But they're very structured. The roles are clear. The roles are so clear that they often write them on the back of the personnel. So you'll see firefighters or police officers, and they have the role printed on the back of them. So it's clear and it's communicated. They're often very analog, so they don't use IT a whole lot. They're writing things down on pieces of paper, on whiteboards, on boards, and so on. And they're very communicative, so they speak a lot. When you hear rescue services or military, you'll hear a lot of chatter on the radio. So they constantly communicate to each other to make sure that everybody knows where they are and have a common understanding of the situation. And they're often very verbal. So there's not a lot of emails going around. So that's some common denominators here. Let me tell you something, another interesting thing. Visually communicated roles. So I talked about being visual about your roles, but colors are often used in other areas, and we can be inspired by that. This is a picture of an aircraft carrier deck. It's called the Rainbow Parade, and it's how you salute VIPs on an aircraft carrier. And you see all the people in the colored shirts. That's their specific roles, because on an aircraft carrier, everybody knows that the purple guys are the ones dealing with aviation fuel. They're called the grapes. And everybody knows that the people in red are the ones handling weapon systems and ordnance. It hasn't always been like that. It's developed to be like that because accidents occurred, and it was important that everybody knew the correct position of these specific roles in a specific time. But it's like that now, and we can be inspired by that, and that's the reason why we're using colors in our IT disaster recovery plan in a very consistent way. By the way, you don't see the orange in any of these roles, and that's because the guys in orange are astronauts. So they're the ones being saluted, and they're definitely the coolest ones here in this picture. Another thing here that I want to share with you is the pilots in the cockpits, and specifically that they're following their checklists. They haven't always followed checklists. That began sometime in 1953 when aircraft, specifically military aircraft, became too complex for any individual to grasp. That's why they introduced checklists. Basically, the complexity of an airplane has rendered people in some ways helpless, because nobody can grasp the complexity of an airplane anymore. So that's one of the reasons why they follow checklists, because sometimes you forget important stuff. Another reason is that pilots do not always have the same nationality. They don't have the same culture. They don't have the same references. They don't have the same language. That's why they use a common language. Often they use English in cockpits, even though they are, it's not their native language. and they always follow their checklist, even though they're very, very experienced and have done this 1,000 times before. So you can ask yourself if what you do is more or less complex than flying an airplane, but I'm quite sure you'll come to the conclusion that the IT systems in Novo are definitely of a similar or greater complexity. In the army, I have some experience from that. I'm also a captain in the Danish armed forces. But in there we very much rely on fixed structure and clear communication, and that's because everything is chaotic in a war zone. So having a clear structure on how you do commands is essential. So everything changes, but what doesn't change is the structure about how you give a command and how you communicate, and that gives some peace of mind, and it gives some kind of predictability in a chaotic situation. In emergency services, they also use checklists. Haven't always done that, but they're doing it now. For instance, if you go into an operating room where the surgeons work, then you'll experience that before a surgery, they'll do what they call a timeout, and that's where everybody in the room states who they are, what their role is, and what they expect to happen next. So that's a security precaution, and it may sound simple and unnecessary, but this actually saves lives in the end. So to sum that up, you have the colors, you have the organization, or we're designing that. And if you also know where you are in time, what phase you're in, if you're in the activation phase, the control, recovery, stand down, or resilience phase, we're designing a plan where you can basically flip open the page that's relevant for your role in that point in time, and then you'll have this specific checklist that can assist you and help you do your best in the situation. And that will bring something to your work that's repeatable and predictable. And it'll save time. That's very important. We're saving time here. So for each hour you put into this project, that's an hour saved when you are in a crisis. Because all the decisions, all the questions that you need to answer, we're asking you to answer these questions now when you have time, or at least more time than you would have in a crisis. I hope that makes sense to you. This is another representation of the drawing I showed you earlier. So this is a swim lane flowchart diagram, but it's exactly the same representation before. So whatever you feel like the best, use that representation, but they're exactly the same. So to give you some examples of action cards, each role will have action cards for different points in time. So when you activate the IT disaster recovery plan, of course it's important that you have names and contact information of the people relevant. It's also important to know what your team does, what can your team do for you, and then we have agendas for each of the meetings that are part of the phases. So for each phase there's an agenda, and the purpose of having a fixed agenda is again predictability. So everybody knows that these are the items, the points you'll go through, and you don't skip things, because you may have someone in your team waiting for that point to appear because they have important input on that point. That's why you don't skip things. That's why you go through things very methodically and consistently. Here you have an action card for the crisis coordinator with a representation of the whiteboard that he or she will follow. You have a communication coordinator looking at what stakeholders do I have and what means of communications do I have and how would I like to use that. So important thoughts, sometimes difficult decisions, but made in times of peace and written down on a piece of paper, so you can use them when you're stressed. Same goes for the blue roles. Here you have facility manager, IT, and the gray roles, security, compliance, business relations, and so on. So I hope this gives you some idea about that these are actually things that people will do individually, but it all plays together in harmony. All right, last thing I want to share with you is how we test this. So sometime after the summer, we'll test the ability to follow and use the IT disaster recovery plan. And when we show you the caps, we actually often use the caps. So we may be handing out caps to you with your specific role printed on it. And the reason we do that is because some of these roles are not organizational roles, so they may be new to you. Also, you may switch people out in the different roles. So you could have a room of people and it's not clear exactly who does what. So communicating that with colors, like I mentioned on the aircraft carrier deck, that could be a very good idea. We're also using a stopwatch to time box the exercise as we move forward. All the exercises are usually time boxed to 3 hours. And the reason for that is we want to make them as short as possible so you are able to train more. The more you train, the better you get. And we time box the 3 hours into phases that will be short and probably a little stressful because we're taking you through an unknown scenario in a very short period of time. But if you follow your action cards and you do what you're supposed to do in the plan, then it's time enough, and it's a good way to check if what's in your plan actually works. So it's important that you follow the plan and you do not improvise. That'll make it harder on you. We're also evaluating as we move forward, so you can keep track of how you're doing. These are examples of how we assess the attendees of an exercise. We do that for using what we call the 4 C's: control, confidence, cooperation, and communication. And control is your ability to manage and be in compliance with your IT disaster recovery plan. Basically doing what you set out to do or deviating in a structured way. So that's the management compliance. On the confidence, it's leadership and decisiveness. So that's your ability to execute and your ability to get things done and perform leadership. Cooperation is group dynamic and use of skills. So that's your ability to work together as a team and to get the best out of each role there and make sure that everybody performs as they should. The last one is communication, and that's information flow outside the team. So that's your ability to keep all your stakeholders informed and convey information that's for you probably in uncertain in a situation where you know too little, but you still need to keep your stakeholders informed. It's a very difficult discipline, but important, very important. So before an exercise is done, we'll share with you our initial assessment about how things have worked over time and what areas you do best in, and what areas should be focused on in terms of improvement, and also an overall exercise score, so you can see from one exercise to the next how you improve. And in our experience, for each time you test, you get better, and you definitely improve the score. Again, I would say the last thing here is keep in mind that we test the plan. We do not test the talent of the day. The reason that we design this IT disaster recovery plan is to make sure that things are repeatable and predictable, and we save time. So it's more important that we test the plan and that we figure out what's good and what needs to be improved, rather than the talent of the day, and we're sure that you're all skilled and experienced, but we're more interested in making sure that what you're doing here is repeatable and robust. So that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching this video to the end. Thank you for participating and sharing the resilience on Novo Nordisk, and we look very much forward to working with you, and I'll see you on one of the coming workshops, and probably see you on site in the US if you're over there. So thank you very much for your participation, and see you later.